It's done. Ladies and gentlemen, it is done. The deal from Microsoft to buy Activision Blizzard has gone through. On top of that, like the cherry on top of the already very good news is obviously that Bobby Kotick is leaving at the end of the year. We sort of speculated that that would happen anyways, so they would keep Bobby Kotick around for a little while, you know, just to sort of let shareholders breathe and think that everything's normal. And then after the acquisition is done, that's when Bobby Kotick will leave. That's sort of par for the course, very standard business practice with any sort of acquisition. Now, this video, I'm not really going to talk about the acquisition. I'm not going to talk about Bobby Kotick being, leaving, or technically, I don't think it was by choice. I do think that ultimately, if you listen to how Phil Spencer spoke about Bobby Kotick, I don't think he wanted Bobby Kotick to be around anyways. I'm instead going to focus on what this means for Blizzard, what this means for the future of games, what we can expect. Can we expect things like World of Warcraft on Games Pass? We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about what the future looks like. And a lot of it is going to be using the history of Xbox and how they acquire studios, what happens to those studios once they're acquired, and then sort of trying to extrapolate what this would mean for Blizzard as a company. All right, so first and foremost, with the deal now finally being closed, I do believe the first big thing that's going to happen is the decoupling of Activision and Blizzard. And the reason for it is, well, there's a couple. I don't know if it's just two. It might just be two, but there is actually a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, it makes no sense for Blizzard to still answer to Activision when Activision is now basically answering to Microsoft. The way it worked pre-acquisition was that anything Blizzard wanted to do, they needed Activision to sign off of. Activision would be the ones that supplied the budget, that would be the ones that greenlit projects, and so on and so forth. Activision would also be the ones that tell Blizzard what they can and can't do, because Activision was effectively the parent company, and to this day, I don't think it's quite clear how that ended up happening. You know, originally when Activision acquired Vivendi, the idea was that Activision and Blizzard would be two companies that would be completely separate from one another, but they would trade under the same umbrella, which would be Activision Blizzard. The idea being that together they could have a much higher share price, but that they would be individual studios. Somehow, Bobby Kotick, in his infinite evil, managed to get control of both companies and basically become the shot caller. Activision Blizzard has never been an official marriage. There is the company Activision, and then there is the company Blizzard, and then there is the share price company that is Activision Blizzard. So I do believe that that's going to be uncoupled from one another, and it's going to become Activision and Blizzard, Microsoft Activision and Microsoft Blizzard. So that's the first thing. The second thing that points to this decoupling almost definitely being in the pipeline is Mike Ybarra. For those of you that didn't know, Mike Ybarra came from Microsoft, joined Activision Blizzard, and then became the president of Blizzard. And I can't help but feel like this was a pre-move, if you will. They already knew that they were going to acquire Activision Blizzard, and I'm pretty sure Phil Spencer wanted Mike Ybarra at the head of Blizzard. Maybe he believes that Mike Ybarra can right the ship, or maybe, he wants Mike Ybarra to be the big boss of Activision Blizzard. I don't know yet, but I know that that signals to me that we are going to see a complete and utter decoupling. And it kind of makes sense. Activision and Blizzard don't make the same games. They don't have historically the same approach to making video games. Activision is very much about quantity. Just every year there needs to be a new Call of Duty. Whereas Blizzard have always been a company that really takes their time. And that really is what I want to talk about in this video. What is this going to mean for Blizzard games in the future? Now, for this, we obviously, we don't know exactly what Phil Spencer and Xbox is planning. But what we do know is how Phil Spencer and Xbox approach companies that they own currently. And there are a ton of companies. We went through it the other day on stream. It's almost 30 plus companies, studios that Microsoft owns at the moment. And I have some inside information for you all, because I had the privilege of actually being able to speak to a fairly high up developer at one of the more recent acquisitions that Blizzard made for a company. I won't go into detail about who it is, just to not reveal my sources, but it's a pretty big company. It's a company that makes games that I absolutely love. And he basically told me that right after the acquisition, Xbox came to them and they were like, right, what are you guys working on currently? And they were like, yeah, these are the games that we have in current development. And Microsoft was like, all right, so how much money do you guys need in order to make these games a reality? And they were like, oh, you know, this is the sort of running budget that we're currently running on. And Microsoft was like, well, how much money do you need to make the game perfect for you? Like, what's the budget that you need in order to make sure that this game is the best that it can be? And they're like, oh, this. And Xbox was like, cool, go for it. They had zero deadlines on when the games need to be released. They had zero push on like the company telling the company, oh, you must do this, you must do that. There was no sort of push of, oh, we need cash shops in this game. We need you to be able to, you know, make as much money out of this game. Like, none of it. They genuinely did not care. For Microsoft, it was just a game of make the games, you know, here you go. Here's your money. We're not going to interfere. We're not going to. And then we also have the information from Phil Spencer himself when he was asked, I believe it's a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, he was asked, you know, what's his leadership style at Xbox? And he basically said, I don't micromanage, right? As far as I'm concerned, each of these companies make games. They know what they're doing. I just let them do their thing. Everything seems to be lining up that is indeed. And I think that's the biggest news for us, you know, Blizzard gamers out there. That's the biggest thing for me. That's the thing that makes me excited for Microsoft's acquisition. Now, there are definitely things that we can talk about in terms of an absolute bleeding of talent at Blizzard Entertainment. The fact that a lot of the old guard that actually made Blizzard what it is today, or what it was a few years ago, they have already left. We just found out that another developer is leaving Activision Blizzard, World of Warcraft specifically, to start, you know, working somewhere else. We don't know yet where Josh is going to work. But there has definitely been a sort of talent drain from Blizzard over the last, let's say, 5 years. And that's definitely going to be felt. That's definitely going to show. Ultimately, though, for those of you that didn't know, Activision's approach to Blizzard was very much throw as many developers at the problem as is humanly possible, and then hopefully Blizzard brings out more content than ever before. That's sort of been Activision's approach to running Blizzard. More developers will mean more content more frequently, and we see that. World of Warcraft currently has about 700 developers working on it actively. Diablo had over 9,000 developers throughout its 7-year process. You know, obviously not at one point, but over the course of it, it was over 9,000 developers that worked on that game. There is a sense of too many cooks in the kitchen, and that's really up to Microsoft or Activision. Because for Activision, the whole point was that Blizzard is too slow at releasing video games. We want more video games more frequently. I even heard from an insider that there was some talk about getting World of Warcraft to do yearly expansion launches because they didn't like the whole concept of every 2 years. They felt like they could make much more money if it was every single year. You know, you have a $40 expansion every year, and that's great. And that's something that Blizzard was actively forced to try and work towards, even though, well, as we can see, that's never actually happened, because as it turns out, making expansions is pretty hard, right? You can't do it as fast as Activision brings out Call of Duty, because the player base, you know, requires new worlds and new lore, and there's a lot of things that goes into making a World of Warcraft expansion. So what is it that we can look forward to with Microsoft? Well, we have to talk about priority here, right? What is it that Activision prioritized? And then what is it that Microsoft prioritizes? Because that really is what it boils down to. Activision very much prioritized game releases or cash shops alongside live service video games. Right? So the idea for Activision was bring out a game, sell that game at a premium, $70, you know, minimum to get the game, and then try and figure out how to make even more money off of the cash shop. Because that's really where all of the sales come, or all of the money comes from, is from game sales and then in-game sales. Microsoft has a very different business strategy. For Microsoft, the focus is on the Game Pass. That's $15 a month. The service has been around for about 3 years now, I believe, maybe 4 even. but in South Africa, at least, it's been here for the last 3 years. And the service is $15 a month, and you gain access to every single first-party game from Microsoft day one, as well as a slew of other games that is on the service that come from studios that don't even belong to Activision. So the whole idea, or Microsoft, the whole idea for Microsoft is to try and make Game Pass as juicy a service as is humanly possible in order to convince all gamers that this is the service that I should sign up for because there's many, many games on there. Microsoft also then follows a very different approach. Unlike Activision, that sort of dreams of this world where Blizzard Entertainment can bring out 20 games a year and just flood the market with video games, Microsoft instead goes the opposite route. They sort of go, wait a second, if we acquire 50 studios and each of those 50 studios release a video game every 2 to 3 years, we have an absolute slew of video games literally every single year that hits the Game Pass. And that makes Game Pass an incredibly juicy service for video gamers, especially now with the economy starting to hit and $15 a month is actually a lot of money. It starts to make sense. $15 for over 200 video games. Why the hell not? And that really is where Microsoft focuses. They just want their studios to make video games consistently so that the service keeps getting new day one releases. And we are starting to see, right in the beginning, Xbox Game Pass maybe once or twice a year would have a first-party day one release on the service, whereas now it's sort of every month there's a new first-party, day one release for a video game as the studios are starting to slowly but surely trickle in. What does this mean for Blizzard? It means that the pressure is off. They no longer have to release new games every single year. They no longer have to hit arbitrary little lines in the sand of, oh, you must do this now, and then you must do that, and then you must do this. They can now really spend their time to make good games. It's obviously going to depend on the internal culture as well. Can Mike Ybarra change that internal culture to quality over quantity? I think there is going to be less of a push on cash shops in the game from Microsoft because it doesn't seem like Microsoft's games have a lot of push for cash shops. There's a ton of Microsoft games that launch with 0 cash shops. Again, Microsoft wants people on the Game Pass. And the Game Pass is $15 a month anyway, so they don't really care if after, you've paid for the Game Pass, if you then also buy a bunch of stuff from the shop, because they just want your $15 a month for the Game Pass. So I think all in all, it's good news on that front. But then there's even bigger good news, and that is RTS. Warcraft 4, StarCraft 3, maybe even more RTS games in the future. For the first time ever, it kind of, again, makes sense for Blizzard to make an RTS. Under Bobby Kotick, RTSs aren't known as billion-dollar industries. They're not going to... An RTS isn't going to make $1 billion a year. That's just not going to happen. It is a very small niche within a very large gaming industry. But it doesn't have to be. Not with Microsoft's model. Because all Microsoft wants is games on the Game Pass. And this makes sense. You can see it. There's an entire studio who only makes Age of Empires that Microsoft owns. I can see a world in which Blizzard can once again reliably make things like Warcraft 4, make things like StarCraft 3, and no questions would be asked because it's a game that's going to go on the Game Pass, and that's the only thing that Phil Spencer cares about. There's also another world where this could be really, really cool, and that is the outsourcing of IPs. Blizzard now have the ability to link up with 30 plus studios and share their IPs with those studios because there are studios that just do certain things much, much better. We've spoken a long time on this channel about things like a first person or a single player World of Warcraft game. There are companies like Obsidian Entertainment that do phenomenal CRPG or RPG games that would probably jump at the opportunity to make such a game in the Warcraft universe, and now they're all part of the same company. The guys from Age of Empires, can't remember their name now, but Sierra, no, it's not Sierra, they used to be Sierra, but something called something else now. Can't remember the name now, but the guys from Age of Empires would probably jump at the opportunity to make a Warcraft 4 or even a StarCraft 3. And this is now possible, right? World of Warcraft, the IP, Overwatch, the IP, all of these IPs can be shared. And the last thing that makes me think that that's definitely something that might happen is Mitten. Mitten's return, Blizzard continuously states that Mitten is in control. He's the creative director for World of Warcraft and Warcraft, which is very weird because World of Warcraft kind of is Warcraft. Outside of Warcraft Rumble, and maybe you can make the case for Hearthstone, what's Warcraft, right? There hasn't been a Warcraft game in decades. It's not even on the cards. But the fact that Mitten is back with the entire IP of Warcraft suggests to me that that is definitely on the cards. A Warcraft 4 is coming, and that is something that I'm super excited for. But that's enough for me. I wanted to give you my thoughts because a lot of you asked what did I think about this. So yeah, that's my thoughts. If you liked it, if you want to subscribe, go over to Patreon. $1 a month keeps this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you stuff that you do not need. Ladies and gentlemen, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.